Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to demonstrate live shading groups and how they can be used to enhance workflows for look development artists. Live shading groups are essentially live groups which have now been introduced into the Network Material Create space. They work in exactly the same way as live groups with the same functionality and are an expansion on shading macros which were introduced in the 5.0 release. If you're not already familiar with live groups, they're a fundamental feature of Katana which allow artists to publish and version sections of their node network separately from the rest of the Katana project, which makes it really easy for multiple artists to work on the same project at once, as well as being able to share and reuse these nodes with other artists or across other projects. And you can find out more about live groups on the Katana Learn page. With live shading groups, these capabilities are available within Network Material Create, so artists can build libraries of reusable materials and masks which can be used across multiple assets and projects. By doing this, artists can pick from pre-existing materials to use, either as a template or to build on, and the material can then be overwritten or versioned for that specific use. So let's have a look at how to make use of these live shading groups inside Katana. In this project, I have an asset and a base material set up. And then I have a couple of other materials for a very basic snow and moss material, which are both plugged into a variable switch so that I can easily choose between them. I also have a mask which I'm using to layer up these materials. This mask is created using a 3D-Light triplanar node, which I've set to planar, and used to output a mask for the regions of the geometry based on the y-axis. I've then blended this with a fractal to break it up and converted it to a float so that I'm able to use it as a mask. Because this is all generated procedurally, this section of the node network could be really easily applied to other assets to create masks for the same or other materials. And there's a few ways that this can be done, but the method we'll have a look at in this video is to use live shading groups. So you can create a live shading group from the tab node creation menu in the same way that you'd create any other shading node and place it in your node network. And then you can start to build up a section of your node network inside this live shading group. Or for existing networks like we have here, you can select the nodes, press G to create a shading group, and then right click and convert it to a live shading group. Once you've converted it, the node will have a yellow symbol to indicate it's a live shading group, and it will be yellow because it's unlocked, so we can jump inside and make any changes to these nodes in here. The asterisk means that there's unsaved changes, and at the moment that's because we haven't yet published this live shading group. So let's do that now. Right click the node again and choose publish if you just want to publish the live shading group but continue editing the network, or you can choose publish and finish editing contents if you're finished making any edits. So I'll choose this option, just name it something relevant and save it out. And now you'll notice the live shading group symbol is grey to indicate that changes cannot be made to the contents. And if I jump inside, then you can see all the nodes are locked off. This is really useful as it means you can split the shading node network into sections to make collaboration between artists much easier, as you can all be working on different parts of the same network, and then your section and other artist sections can be locked to prevent any unwanted changes. Any parameters from nodes within the live shading group that are promoted to the material interface are also locked when the live shading group is locked. If you do want to make any changes, you can simply right click and choose edit contents, and the live shading group will be unlocked again. And from here you can make any edits and then publish it again. When you publish your live shading groups, you have the option of overriding the original or versioning it and saving it as a new live shading group. By utilizing versioning with these, you can iterate freely without the fear of losing any work, as you can always jump back to previous iterations and revert any changes if needed. It is worth noting that if you reference the shading node network containing a live shading group in a network material edit node, then the live shading group will be treated as a shading group to avoid any potential clashes or issues if things are being edited downstream. So I'm going to save out each of these sections as a live shading group so that I can demonstrate how they can be shared across other projects and other assets. And now I'll jump into a new project and bring in the live shading groups. So in this project, I have the base material for a dragon asset, and I'm going to create live shading group nodes to bring in the snow material and the mask, and then we can layer them up in the same way as before. So I have a live render running so that we can see the material being applied, and I'll create a live shading group. To bring in an existing live shading group, we can open the parameters and browse for the source file. You could also right-click the live shading group in the node graph and choose Load to bring up this file browser as well. And I'm going to do that for both of these and create a DL layered material to layer these up with the existing base dragon material. And as I'm doing this, you can see in the live render that the material now has that layer of snow applied to it. So initially, when the live shading groups are imported, they'll be locked, so no changes can be made just yet. But they can be unlocked in the same way from here by right-clicking and choosing Edit Contents. And so we can make some changes to the parameters to tweak them for this particular asset. And we can either do this from inside the live shading group or by using the material interface, which will be populated when the live shading group was imported. So once you've made the changes to this material, you can then publish it again, and it can be versioned again if you don't want to overwrite the original or latest version. This means that you can have variations of these masks or materials, which is set up for different purposes or assets. And as I mentioned before, versioning makes it easy to revert back to any previous versions if needed. There is also a benefit to overwriting the latest version, and I'll just demonstrate this here. So if you choose to overwrite the latest, then it means that any iteration of that live shading group across all projects will be updated with the same changes. You'll just need to refresh the cache or reopen the project for that change to take place. This is the exact same functionality as root level live groups, and it's a huge plus of using them as opposed to something like macros or shading macros. It means that you can have a library of reusable materials which can be updated as and when is needed. And you only have to make that update once. Thank you for watching. For any more information on live shading groups, you can head to the Katana Learn page for the documentation as well as tutorials for any other new features and core workflows.